What's going on, guys? It's the 5 Year Pass podcast with me, Suddy, and this is Shyam. And today we'll be doing something a bit different. Just talking shit, really, for a few minutes. See how long you can bear with us. Talking a bit of football, a bit of COVID, maybe, a bit of democracy. Who knows? Let's see where this takes us. Something a bit different, yeah. Why not? Shyam suggested this. I thought it was a good idea, just to see where the conversation goes. So, Shyam, what's going on, man? A few things you wanted to chat about. Do you want to start with what I actually thought was a pretty good idea to talk about the FA chairman's comments? Do you know what he actually said? Because I've only heard like the description of what he said rather than what he actually said.
Yeah, I had. I'm just going to try and pull up here. If I lose the screen, let me know. But basically, he referred to class and athletic footballers as coloured footballers. Like South Asians and Caribbean people as possessing different career interests, and he described homosexuality as a life choice. So I just thought it was interesting.
So does he mean that gay people? Is he saying that gay people choose to be gay? Is that what you mean by life choice?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. It's a very if it wasn't the FA chairman, I'd actually find it slightly funny. It's just something that just seems really outdated, just in terms of his view on things. Like it's almost as if, like, if I was growing up as a kid, you'd hear him use those terms, for so players of African descent and Asian players and all that. You'd hear those things perhaps as a kid, and you'd get a little bit angry by it, and then you just sort of move on with it. Even in particular his comments on homosexual footballers, but it's just funny that it didn't seem to be the major story. It was just this almost universal acceptance that his views were just really archaic and really old, and okay, he was just sacked and everyone sort of moved on. Like, it didn't sit and stir, Like, I thought that was actually the notable thing about it, that they just sacked him because they realized this is just that stupid. We're not even going to try and defend it.
Yeah. Colored Asians working in IT. Yeah.
This is like a, I don't know exactly what it was, but it sounds like it was at like a parliamentary inquiry. Like, it wasn't something he said over dinner with a couple of mates. Like, he actually was at like an inquiry.
You see, my thing.
Why they were suggesting that it was about the upper leagues of English football creating sort of rescue packages for some of the lower leagues. So
he said this in front of Parliament. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like? I suppose he thought he could get away with it in front of that Parliament. I don't know, but my thing is that in a time of what he said was wrong. I was actually on my housemates the other day, and it's very hard. Like, I like, my housemates are my closest friends, but it's very hard for people to kind of understand from like my perspective, but definitely from your perspective as well. Even though you'd say you're half white, I guess dad's white, but you are still different looking to most Australians back in the 90s when we were in high school and all that. But just saying that it's actually not racist in itself, what he's saying, but it just shows his mentality, where he's from, right? Yeah. I don't think he's outwardly racist. Like, you're not going to see him lynching a black guy like they did.
It's interesting with racist, because it's almost as if, like, you use the word racist and everyone goes to 10 on the excitometer, you know what I mean? Or like, there are gradations of racism, There are people with sort of fixed views that might perhaps be a little ignorant. Like, you and I both have Indian background. You actually have family in India that I have no family in India that I actually know. It's quite but whenever, like, if I go to India, people say, "Oh, you're visiting family," like, that people have, like, you could say, "Oh, that's racist." It's not. It's just a view that they have that's just incorrect and need to be updated. But the reason that someone makes an assumption, there's an element of perhaps ignorance as opposed to racism. But it's just this one. As if this guy is it seems like this guy's just such a caricature. That was the funny thing about it. Yeah.
What does he look like? I'd love to know. Greg Clark. I bet he looks exactly like what I'm thinking of. Like Prince Charles' younger brother.
I'm thinking Monopoly Man. Yeah.
He looks like Prince Charles' younger brother who had like too many pies. But okay, no. What I was going to say was this: if I was to make the joke, Asians like when they say Asians in the UK, it's not like Asians in Australia. Asians in the UK are Indians. So
Yeah. We say
if I was
Indians
to say,
for us,
yeah,
and
if I was to say,
Chinese people. Yeah.
I want to be a footballer, but my parents said I'd get a real job. That's exactly what he's saying, but but like he shouldn't be saying it in this day and age. Like Indians know what I'm saying. Like, man, if I told my parents I want to be a footballer, I'll get like a couple of metaphorical smacks, as a kid. But no, he's a fool. He's a fool for thinking that he's a. It shows how backward he is, and he's like the days of no filters and saying what you want is over. Like I'll openly say, man, like I have a very multicultural group of friends, and we take the piss out of each other racially. That's just
You should. They should. Like,
we do it with our friends.
Everybody who has
That's
a group of friends like that, you just find reasons to take strips off.
Taking the piss out of your guy mates, especially.
The guy's Chinese. You press the Chinese button until he reacts. Like it's the difference there is intent. The different. Like if you look at someone like the comedian Russell Peters, he made a whole career out of making racist jokes.
Yeah.
But is he a racist person? No, and the difference is intent. He's just having a laugh, and people laugh because they understand the jokes, as opposed to someone like this fellow who's quite outdated and coming from maybe he hasn't hasn't met people of color or spent enough time with people of color. And then on the other side you've got the white supremacist who, like, you use the word lynching, like that's the upper spectrum. This guy's unfortunately somewhere in the middle.
If you've learned anything from the last 4 years of Trump, and I've always said I don't think Trump is an out and out racist guy, but if you learn anything from Trump, anyone in leadership positions can accidentally or kind of indirectly indirectly through inaction set the tone for more and more things to happen, like the way Donald Trump set the tone for racists to come out of the cracks much more, or even boys. I say men because they're more aggressive, physically could be more aggressive, but for them to kind of imagine men who are lost and kind of look at Donald Trump and go like, oh, it's okay to be racist. I just wanted to bring up a point. Have you seen the movie The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey? It's a Guy Ritchie film. There's a point I want to bring up.
I'll just quickly correct you there. You said like people might look at Donald Trump and say, oh, it's okay to be racist. I don't think that people necessarily do that, but they might think it's okay to have those values or say the things that he's saying. Because there's a difference between that and being racist,
Yeah. It's okay to be, I mean,
I'm not saying either is right. I'm just trying to.
The analogy I always say is like the groups are so loud at this point. Oh, let's say until a week ago, hopefully, that's like a young man who's lost, black or white or Chinese or whatever, a man who's lost and looks at Donald Trump and goes like, because of Donald Trump, these kind of groups are getting louder. It's easier to find them on Reddit, on even Facebook, man. It's not hard to find them anymore. These groups are louder and louder. So that's the point I'm trying to make. Sorry, back to the movie I was saying. Speaking of intent, there's a movie called The Gentleman, which is Matthew McConaughey, the guy from Sons of Anarchy, Guy Ritchie film. Lots of big actors, but I just can't remember the names right now. It's not coming to me. And there's a bit Colin Farrell's in. He's one of the kind of big characters in the film, and he's a boxing coach, and he's training two guys. One's black, one's white, and the white guy goes to the black guy, "Oh, you black cunt!" And the black guy's like, "What the fuck?" And he goes, "Coach, he just called me a black cunt." And he goes, "He didn't call you a black cunt. He called you a black cunt. You're black and you're a cunt, but you're not a black cunt." It's not racist. It's not racist. It's observant. Something like that. It's such a funny scene. I mean, showing it here, the video might get pulled off, but it's such a funny scene. But it would get pulled off. No, it get pulled off because you can't show a movie scene on a YouTube video like that. But it's a hilarious scene. Like, obviously, I would never call my non-close friends black cunts, but I have a few black friends who happen to be cunty sometimes. I'm kidding. I love all my black friends equally and athletically.
I don't want to harp on it too long. I suppose the difference is because you're talking about, say, with your friends, and there's different layers, and the way that you understand that is simply through being in that environment and being around people like that. So you get, and it's a bit hard to put into words at times, but you get the sort of the different layers and the subtleties, and you might go off at a particular friend more than a friend of a different ethnicity simply because the guy's more sensitive and you go after the sensitive guy. But you understand those layers because you're in that environment. Where this guy, I would suggest, is clearly not being in that environment.
Something I heard interesting before we get on to the next topic, something I heard from, I think I may have sent you this, but Eric Weinstein talks about male to male bonding as an evolutionary perspective and saying, men test each other in different ways, and the way you've tested each other kind of evolved through time, and now we give shit to each other. The way like I'd give you shit, or like, you know, the friends that we have mutually, we give each other a lot of shit, because it comes from the fact that if you can tolerate that little kind of jabs every day when you actually need something on a grand scheme, like, dude, I need you to come to my house now, I need this help, I need you to bury the body, like, then you know it's serious. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, so the threshold gets tested, and that's the way I'd say girls do it as well. I just don't know because I don't hang around girls that often. But
And when you hang
I'd say
around girls, you're not a girl. So
there's an element, there's an element to it with girls as well. But I can tell you with guys, it's just that way. Anyway,
that's what I mean.
look, he shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
He it's probably the way he talks with his friends. It's Greg Clark, sorry. And I fucked up, man. Like, he landed on his feet anyway. I'll be very honest. The way the world is, this guy will land on his feet at a private firm in like 6 months. He probably took a huge bonus from the FA. Not bonus, sorry. What do you call it? What do you call it, Shyam?
Yeah, or something.
Yeah, whatever it is, and he's gonna get a nice cushy job in 6 months, and he'll be fine. What is he, like in his 60s?
Yeah, 63.
63. So there you go. Anyway, so the next thing I wanted to say was Zlatan, man. Like, just, I mean,
he's equal top scorer. No, he's clear top scorer. Sorry, in Serie A.
Is it after Ronaldo or Immobile or something?
Ronaldo's equal second with Belotti from Torino. They're on 6, and Zlatan's on 8, and then the next bunch of guys are on 5. So yeah, just doing the business there.
And even his goal per 90 is second best to Ronaldo. Yeah. What do we think? Greatest football character of all time.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better one.
Yeah, in terms of, there is an element of I can only, in terms of character, the most absorbing football character, I can only think of Maradona, to be honest, who would be on that sort of level. But Maradona was kind of really real and raw, as opposed to Zlatan, who's quite almost a bit of a pantomime at times. He loves the attention, he soaks it up, and he doesn't. There's a mixture of incredible respect for him and his football ability, and then there's the side of him that's just a big clown that just likes. He likes the attention. He'll say the silly thing to get attention, like in terms of repeatedly referring to how great he is, for example.
Yeah, I take it back though. Maradona, man. Maradona is a bad. I mean, I hope he's okay. He's got the brain bleed, and I knew we have a mutual love for him. But I gotta disagree. I gotta agree with you, or maybe disagree. But he's a bad man. That guy was scoring goals in the day and fucking hanging out. You've heard that story of him going to Pablo Escobar's prison, or his like prison, aka holiday home. Have you heard this story?
No, I haven't.
Maradona's openly talked about Escobar wanted to kick around, and he was like, who shall I call? It's the 80s. I'll call the best football on the planet. So they helicoptered him into the prison. If you watch Narcos, Pablo Escobar, before he surrendered himself, built a prison in the middle of the Colombian jungle, had his 25, 30 best friends come and stay here with whores and like everything he wanted. He was just in the middle of the jungle instead, and his family would come visit him. So Maradona went to visit him, and Maradona was like, it was ridiculous. Like, it wasn't a prison. It was when you talk about,
I don't know.
But I guess you couldn't do that today, obviously. But Maradona, if you talk about characters, a bad man. At the minute now, what's happening in hospital is that apparently he's got. Well, I'm not surprised. It's not an apparent
thing. You said bad man. What do you mean? Like, in that he's really
I don't mean bad. I mean bad. I mean bad the way. Fuck, I can't even think of a guy. You can't even compare it. Oh, the way like Paul Gascoigne's a bad man. Like, you could have a great night out with him, but like, bring your passport and like bring your lawyer's number as well. Then you'll finish the night and you'd be like, that was a great night with a bad man.
He dialed everything to 10, didn't he, Maradona?
In the same way. In the same way, actually, a great example of that is Roy Keane in a different perspective. Like, Roy Keane is a bad man in that if you're on his side, you have like the best, you have the best lieutenant to look up to. But if you're not, be ready to bleed. So, look, what's happening right now with him, I was reading up the other day, was he has all these kind of codependencies with various, I don't think he's drug dependent in the illegal sense. I think he's got like lots of benzodiazepine addictions and stuff like that. He's definitely alcohol addicted. So they can't give him the drugs for the brain bleed just yet. So he can't do a full recovery the way, like, touch wood, you and me would probably be able to do quite quite well within a few months. So he's actually quite sick, and it's apparently a
Yeah.
miracle that he's even stayed alive at this point, which unsurprising, man. How he's not even that old, man. What is he? I reckon he's in 65.
He's 60. I think he's the
What?
same. Yeah, I think he's 60. I think he's the same age as my mother.
No, he is 60. Yeah, he is 60.
I shouldn't mention my mother's age, but yeah. I remember him being born in that year.
Yeah, so it says here he's gone home. Yeah, he's gone home, but I mean the rehab is going to take years.
Oh yeah, he will be in bed for a while. I think Maradona. But you see, here's the thing. Like you said, Zlatan's a big character, and then we started talking about Maradona. But yeah, so Maradona is just such a massive character. But yeah, coming back to Zlatan, just like the thing with Maradona, I suppose the one sort of flaw with him is how he fell so quickly from grace. But as you look at guys like Messi, Ronaldo, the best examples, and Zlatan as well, how they've just kept going as they've gotten older. And Maradona was pretty much gone by the time. But I think the 1990 World Cup, he was 30. And after that, straight afterwards.
He played the 94 World Cup, Maradona, didn't he? Sorry.
He played one game, and then he tested positive for cocaine.
That's right.
He played one game up front with Gabriel Batistuta. I think they both scored, and they won 5-0, and everyone went, this is the best thing ever. And then
who I went to school with his son, and I met him.
And then
no, the thing about Zlatan is that he has the classic kind of American dream story, son of immigrants from persecuted Bosnia, Muslim part of Bosnia, and all that kind of stuff, and going through the ranks and yeah, I mean the legend of Zlatan, I guess, winning everywhere he went. Well, he won at United as well. I mean, he won 2 smaller trophies, but Europa League is still a trophy.
In football, that was probably the first of his type. Like if you look at, say, boxing, for example, a lot of the African American boxers that made it big were all quite sort of humble, and they all acted like they were sort of glad for that opportunity, and acted in a very sort of I don't know quite the right
humble
way, yeah. And then Muhammad Ali came along and just turned that on its head. And Zlatan was he's really sort of one of the first of the footballers to really do that. I can't really think of someone, with the possible exception of Ronaldo, who openly said he wanted to win Ballon d'Or, that openly attracts attention and says, "Yeah, I'm great. Look at me." You don't hear. If an English footballer did that, he'd be castrated. Like he'd be openly lynched. Like that idea of a footballer trying to attract attention, say, "Look at me. Look, I'm the best." That sort of mentality hadn't really worked its way into football until he came along. It's something that I think that he's brought to the game, and maybe it's just from, I don't know, watching a lot of American sports and things like that, because that culture there is very it is very much like that in America. I'm the best. I can make this shot. I'm the GOAT, or whatever it is. Whereas you look at like the part of the world we're from, like in Australia and Southeast Asia, the Australian football team, the Socceroos, obviously made the second round of the World Cup in 2006. But during the World Cup, they switched from being in the Oceania Confederation to the Asian Confederation. And then 6 months later, they were playing in the Asian Cup, which was in like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and all that. So they were in the same group as Thailand. And I remember, because I was living in Singapore at the time, so Lucas Neal came to the press conference as Australian captain, and he was all, we did really well at the World Cup. We consider ourselves, one of the teams to beat in this competition and all that. So like things that you would, like in an Australian sporting sense, it's just very matter of fact. Australians are very typically like very straight to the point. But I was just thinking, Lucas, don't say that in Asia. Don't say that in Asia. You're supposed to like talk, even if you win every game 6-0 and you get to the final, you're just supposed to talk yourself down for the final. It's a great opportunity. We have tremendous respect for the other team. The mentality in Asia is kind of like, you don't talk yourself up at all. Even if you are the best, you do not talk yourself up at all.
Is that the one they lost? They lost to Iran or Japan? They lost to a Middle Eastern country. Yeah. Iran, yeah.
They lost to Iran, who won the whole thing in 2007.
That's right, yeah.
Iran
I remember that quite
well.
In
2011, they lost to Japan in extra time in the final. That's a very good game, actually.
Japan, I mean, even Australia going over to the Asian Federation in 06, 07, 06, they were still in Oceania. 07, I mean, it was never, like, a lot of Australians didn't understand football, and I think football was still in its infancy at the time in terms of understanding in Australia. For those who, it was not a given, because people just forgot, like Japan and Korea, two of the best sides in the world. with some world-class players. And today, look at where the weights proceeded today. Middle East football is also very, very good. There's a couple of real ballers in there, and you forget they have like the money that goes into Middle East back then itself was already there. It was just not as famous as it is now. I mean, who's the first big time Middle Eastern investor into European football? Would it be City?
Yeah, I think it was City. I can't think of anyone else. I know that Barcelona were doing the whole thing with Qatar, and there were
no, but it wasn't own. I'm talking about ownership.
Yeah, I know. You said investment. You said investment.
Thaksin Shinawat sold it in 06, 07. That's when company came in. 06, 07.
It was 08 with Robinho, wasn't it?
Company.
Well, it wasn't. No, in 08, didn't Man City get bought in 08, and then Robinho was the signing them.
Sorry. Thaksin bought it, and yeah, no, you're right. It is 2008.
Thaksin bought it and then sold it 1 or 2 years later.
Very quickly, because he was obviously parking his money, and I think, if I'm not wrong, he had the chance to go back to Thailand to become prime minister, and then he I think they fucked him.
Yeah, it was a
comeback exiled.
It was a coup at the time, but there's a lot of coups.
Comeback exiled prime minister. We're not gonna hurt you.
It's a coup culture. Yeah.
Oh god, that country's full of saying you're one thing and then you're other, saying you're a man but you're actually a lady. Oh god. Yeah. Speaking of dangerous propositions, I didn't realize COVID was back in Denmark. You know what? Speaking of Zlatan, actually, Sweden. I love the way Sweden did it. You know, Sweden just didn't do anything, right?
They had that herd immunity mindset, right? They
kind of push forward a few like recommendations, like, lads, would you wear a mask and things like that, and just be a bit clever, wash your hands a bit more. But which is next, obviously Denmark's neighbor there, but Denmark now, it's like it was what Ireland 4 weeks ago was getting about 1,000 cases a day for a week. We had a huge spike, a bigger spike than in March.
Yeah.
And so we've been, that's why we're still in lockdown, a proper lockdown, till for 3 more weeks. Yeah, for 2 or 3 more weeks.
Yeah.
And it's basically to say at Christmas, and then I reckon it's gonna lock down again in February.
It'll be interesting because I think they did it. My theory, looking at Ireland and the UK now, is they're doing lockdowns now so people can actually have a fairly normal Christmas. That seems to be, I don't know, from the outside looking in, that sort of seems to be what they're doing.
It's fairly normal, very, very subjective, but yeah, exactly the point.
But it's interesting with COVID because people have been taking all these measures with distancing and the masks and washing hands. The flu numbers in Australia are like down 95% year on year. So COVID, there's not really any COVID here. Thankfully, particularly I'm on the west coast of Australia, where there's not really any sort of restrictions in place or anything like that. But like, if you look at the amount of flu cases that people being hospitalized and people dying from flu, it's 95% down on last year. And I think a lot of that's just due to things like not even social distancing, more just the masks and washing hands and being more aware of it in your daily life than you otherwise would be.
Right.
But it's funny that people are still getting in hysteria. Like in America, for example, unfortunately it's become a bit politicized. So people still, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to wear this and all that sort of thing. But just taking some quite simple measures has had a very big effect on the numbers. And it's hard to measure with COVID because it wasn't really around a year ago, but it's much easier to measure when you look at something like the flu, which is viral and can be treated in some of those basic ways, and not so much in terms of vaccines and things, but just through basic hygienial habits.
Yeah, you still can't go into like Melbourne without applying to go to Melbourne, right? Or like South Australia.
In Western Australia, you need permission. So I'm on the West Coast in Western Australia. You need actually permission from the government to come in, unless there's certain occupations that are sort of work-related, or like the family considerations if someone's not well. The states generally, like a lot of the travel has started again. It's just that people aren't really moving around. But it's different in Australia with the different states. But Victoria is kind of the one that's been the worst affected. They had like a 3-month lockdown they just came out of.
Generally speaking, I think Australia has done, as far as like put my kind of, I have a different view of this whole thing, but if you talk about purely based on the way a country should have done it, countries like Australia, I'm talking about prominent countries with big populations, Australia being one of them. Are they in the G8? They are they? Australia.
Are they legit?
Are they in the G8? Like
No,
the G8 summit?
they're in the
Okay,
G8.
well, they probably,
Yeah.
okay. Well, they're our first world country. My point is, I think they've done very well. They've done exemplary work, listening to the scientists, and you have New Zealand next door, who's a bit smaller than Australia, but who both done very well, if you ask me. And like it's the kind of the way of thinking, not politicizing too much, having a population that doesn't mind listening to the government for the long term gain, which is quite unusual for me. I reckon it's quite unusual for Australians, because the government itself of Australia is very short-sighted, with the way, since maybe John Howard or maybe the early days of Kevin Rudd, but like I don't think the government has done had a lot of knee-jerk reactions, but they've done very well.
I mean, generally in Australian politics, I think through the 80s and 90s and even into the early 2000s, there were some quite far-seeing leaders who had long reigns as prime ministers as a result. And then I think since about 2007, we've had about 5 or 6 different prime ministers in 10 years, which is a lot for Australia. Not for other countries, but for Australia it is. And those politicians have been a bit more trying to win the next election or keep ahead on the ratings, the week-to-week ratings type thing. Australia's done. I think the isolation has helped in Australia. The geographical isolation of Australia. The government has put in measures sort of to keep the economy going, which has been really good as well. Just keeping people, keep the money going through the economy, through employers or through people looking for work. So they probably handled it pretty well from an economic perspective as much as anything. In Australia, it's funny because 90% of the population lives in 5 cities. So if you could control those 5 cities, you're pretty much 90% of the way there, population-wise.
Yeah, Perth would be very advanced. I think Perth came out of it the quickest, and wouldn't say the best. That's not a competition. The best, but I think Perth came out of it the quickest. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, and
to normalcy.
Like, for those people who don't know Perth is a 2.5-hour flight from the next nearest major Australian city.
Yeah.
It's a very isolated place. 2.5 hours to Indonesia, 2.5 hours to Adelaide, 5 hours to Singapore. The isolation does help. And WA had this thing it was a whole thing about a hard border, they called it, where they were just not letting people come in. Like they actually needed permission, literal permission from the government. And everybody thought it was a bit too much from the Premier at first, but then as in the media made a big noise about it, particularly the Eastern States media here, but then all of a sudden the WA Premier had a 90% approval rating in general, purely because of putting in this hard border and that sort of thing.
Mark McGowan, McGowan, well, that's long-term thinking for you. And that's the kind of thing which, like, I do feel bad for Trump. Some decisions he's made, like when he wanted to do a hard border in January, he was called a racist, and understandably with his past actions. He wanted
to do a hard border? I know he had the travel ban.
On China. He wanted to do a hard border on China.
Yeah.
But when you do a hard border on
repeatedly talk about a ban, but like apparently still 40,000 Chinese people came from China. So I don't. It's hard for the media to track exactly what the story is.
I'm just saying. I'm sure he had similar intentions in mind to McGowan, but he gets kind of dragged through the mud a bit. I actually heard something really interesting. Do you remember Italy at the very start of this whole thing? Italy, people were just falling like flies, like 1,000 deaths a day. Do you remember that? March and April. Do you know why that was? I actually read this really interesting article. There's a lot of these Gucci, Versace, these Italian Louis Vuitton brands in the north of Italy, where Chinese people work in factories there, and so there was a bit of movement there prior to March about people coming into Italy.
Probably people coming back from China. It's a very potentially Chinese New Year and coming back to Italy.
Exactly. I was just going to say there was a lot of movement prior to that kind of November to like February period, when there is a lot of Christmas, New Year, Chinese New Year period, and that's what set the kind of thing, coupled with like Italy's high smoking rate, fairly high obesity rate among like
older population
people, second oldest in the world, oldest in Europe. It was just like a recipe for the like perfect storm, I just thought it was very interesting. The kind
of funny though with I shouldn't say funny is in a laughing way, but the apparently the Atalanta versus Valencia Champions League game ended up being one of the reasons the coronavirus went from Italy to Spain. because all the Valencia fans traveled to the San Siro to watch Atalanta play Valencia in the Champions League.
Oh no, that's for sure. That's what. How you think a mass amount of people got corona in England was the Atletico Liverpool game.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean Liverpool just fucking around like forever.
It's all Liverpool's fault.
And then they gave him a trophy for it.
Yeah.
See, speaking of Liverpool, let's get off this depressing COVID talk. Gomez is now injured. Mark Gomez, Joey Gomez.
Their defense, they're Alisson out, Trent's out, Van Dijk's out, Gomez out, Fabinho out. There's another one out as well. Thiago
should be back this weekend.
So that's massive, and looks like from what I've heard, Gomez is a long-term injury like Van Dijk. So you take you rip out the two centre backs. That's a big blow.
Now I'll go on to say this: if Liverpool do go and win the league this year, for me, it's the greatest Premier League team. I believe. I think this is the most adversity a Premier League team has faced to defend their trophy. I'll find it hard to kind of look past them as being next to Arsenal. Well, I wouldn't say above. I'd say above, but like above Arsenal and United in that 07, 06 to 08, United 99 period. If they go in the league, fuck man, what an achievement it'd be. I don't think they will. I still maintain they'll come third or fourth.
You talk about teams with because it's different with years. Like with United, you can sometimes look at Ferguson as a whole sort of 26-year package, but there are sort of probably three great teams in there: the 94 team, the 99 team, and the 08 team. Probably the three great teams. So this Liverpool team, you're probably looking from about 28. Is it 2018 they made the Champions League final? And they finished second in the league. That was the round the Champions League that year, right?
2018, sorry, yeah, 2018.
2018 they made the Champions League final, finished second. Then 2019 finished second in that incredible challenge with Man City where they both got.
They won the Champions League, yeah.
And won the Champions League in 19, and then 20 that's kind of like if you look at spells for clubs, you probably got sort of about a 3-year cycle for clubs, and it'd be interesting that 2018. We all sort of thought, oh, that's the first year of that team. It might not actually be the first year of that team. 2019 might be the first year, particularly with Van Dijk. He didn't play, obviously. Well, Alisson
is this
Champions League final? So,
is this the excuse they can use to rebuild, to transition? That's what I'm wondering.
It is very interesting in Liverpool because that team is built with a whole bunch of players who are now sort of between 27 and 30. There's like Mane, Salah, Van Dijk. Alisson. There's a whole bunch of guys. Even Alcantara, 29. There's a whole bunch of guys that are in that team that has been built, that they're at their peak. The team is at its peak. The team has been built to succeed for the next couple of years. And I think if they do, they're probably, if you compare them to other great Premier League teams, and I do think they deserve to be ranked against other great Premier League and other great English football teams, they're probably not quite there now. But you think, one or two, they're probably a couple of big trophies away from genuinely being you probably put them along the same lines as someone like the Invincibles from Arsenal, where they've set records and they've won league titles. But then the Champions League does elevate them. So if they've got one Premier League, they've got one Champions League. If they go and get one of those other trophies again, that elevates them to really truly amongst the great teams.
Yeah.
Because they've got 2 Premier League runners-up and 1 Champions League runner-up as well. So that's like 5 firsts or seconds in a 3-year period. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So they're probably one big win away from genuinely being considered, like you're saying, a league or a Champions League away from being, truly one of the English football's greatest teams. And they do have that air about them. And they're actually quite, it hurts to say this as a United man, but they're actually quite entertaining to watch. They play good football. And their front three is deadly. They know the style. They know who they are. It's a bit sort of a Sun Tzu philosophy, know yourself and then know your enemy. Like they know themselves very well.
This and to that point, Salah reminds me of these days. Do you remember when Ronaldo transitioned from around 07 to about 11, 12? There was this transition of Ronaldo where he would do the 100 step over Ronaldo to the
killer Ronaldo,
the shortest route to goal, and Salah has this. I'd say he's not the best player in that team, but he's one of the most efficient players you'll see around.
Yeah.
Any team would love to have. And then the type they play, they press into the counter.
I call it Kung Fu Ronaldo. The reason I say that is not Kung Flu, but Kung Fu. But the Kung Fu is based around the idea that the distance between two objects is a straight line, the closest distance between two objects. So when you punch, it's a lot of straight line type stuff. He became very like that. Like, I am going to score goals, or I'm going to set up goals. And he just became very one-eyed towards doing that, as opposed to like you said, a lot of the elaborate step overs and the flair kind of disappeared into this very efficient player. Salah has started. I agree with you. I hadn't thought about it before, but I agree with you. Salah has he's turned into sort of like an assassin, real assassin in front of goal. Just has an incredible eye for even the half chances and volleys, and that left foot, my God.
Against Chelsea, was it?
There's
no, sorry, to Everton.
Not so much in dribbling or anything. Messi's incredible with the left foot dribbling, but just the way when he shoots, there are shades of Messi, you know, like the minimal backlift, but the incredible power behind it, and just the way the way he sees the shots and takes them. It's elite.
Do you think so? The kind of thing we see nowadays is when a manager leaves, there seem to be mass effects in the big clubs. Without Wenger, United was kind of the start of it all. Chelsea, not so much. We can't really talk about that. But when Pep leaves,
they're revolving door.
Chelsea's a very different. Yeah, so it's a very Real Madrid kind of situation at Chelsea. But like I don't see City competing after Pep leaves either. I mean, even when Pep came in, he didn't win the title. He came third that year. He came third that year. So do you see?
Well, his first season.
Yeah, he came third, didn't he, to Leicester?
Yeah, third or fourth or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think it was fourth, actually. I think Tottenham got third. Yeah, and Chelsea second.
Oh yeah, because Chelsea beat Spurs. Yeah. So the question is, do you think this happens to Liverpool because Klopp has said, "I'm done in 2 years."
I'm a fan of Guardiola. I love that he's a purist. I'm not a big fan of him at City, but particularly at Barcelona. Just like they say, he had all the resources in the world, and he's the only guy to probably have 7 world-class youth graduates come out of the same club, including the potential GOAT. You know, like in Messi, but you still got to use the resources and create a style, and the way that team will be remembered. They will be remembered as, if not the greatest, one of the all-time greatest teams, because they won, because they played beautiful football. So I'm a fan of all of that. The thing is with City, like Karthik said this when he was here, like they created everything for him to come. You know, they literally, like, it was more than just the red carpet. They literally put everything in place for him, and then he came. He needed to do some investment in the playing squad, which is why it took 2 seasons, because there was, particularly that first season, there was an incredible turnover of players. You know, like Joe Hart left and Bravo came in, and then Bravo left. Bravo was replaced by Edison. But there was a lot of turnover of players, like guys like Yaya, who were quite important players, who were ushered out, Nasri, all those fellas. So it took him 2 years to get the playing squad right, but everything else was set out for him as if he was there. The reason that I say that is, if you bring someone else in, everything at the club has been set up for Guardiola. So it would take a big personality. He's almost had, maybe not quite a Ferguson type effect to the level that Ferguson had, but it's in the ballpark, certainly.
Poch
for City
at the end of the year, yeah.
Wouldn't rule it. I mean, Poch. It's funny because he's kind of like, I remember when I was growing up, Italy were the biggest football team in the world. Like, every position just had superstars, you know. But they never won anything. They always seemed to make finals or semi-finals. There was one Euro 2000, they missed 5 penalties against Netherlands when Netherlands played with 10 men. You know, like, they seemed to get close all the time, and then everybody thought they were great because they kept getting close, but they never actually won anything until the 06 World Cup, which was not, with all due respect to that team, player for player, there were other teams that had much better players in those teams, you know? So the left back for Italy was Grosso. Like, 18 months after the World Cup, no one had ever heard of him. I think he started playing for like a Serie B team, you know, like it just kind of fell apart for him after the World Cup. But in that month, he was the best left back in the world. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that Pochettino has built a reputation for being successful, but he hasn't really won anything. He's gotten close a lot. So would City then take the chance on him to win things? So they're a club that's used to winning things. He's not necessarily a manager who's won things. I think he's good enough, but he hasn't done it. So you can't.
But it'll be very.
Even Klopp went up against mighty Bayern Munich and did win a double with Borussia, but he came second a lot all the other seasons.
Yeah.
But Pochettino never really did it, and you could argue that season Leicester won, they probably should have won. And there's others. Before Guardiola got into his stride, they probably should have won something. The fact that Mourinho's kicked on quite well with Tottenham probably doesn't bode that well for Pochettino as well. Although you could argue a manager can sometimes be at a club for too long. But yeah, I think he's good enough, but I'm not sure if a club like Man City will go, yeah, here's this guy who's nearly won everything but never did, and we'll give him the car keys. I just don't. I question marks over whether they would do it, but they might if he's the best alternative available.
Yeah, I think he should go because I don't think United are going to fire Ollie anytime soon. However,
I don't think United should. There's a lot of other things they need to look at before they look at the manager. I think they just put the pressure on the manager. With Ollie, yeah, I mean, Ollie's had good results and he's had bad results, but there's other things that they can change to make the team better before you look at the manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think anyway.
I think if you go, I think there's good continuity with Poch. It'll be like the way when Villanova took over Pep. It was a different type of football, but grounded in the same fundamentals. I think that's what Poch's going to do. You're going to see more direct type of football with
vertical.
Yeah, more vertical. But it's not I mean, I tend to usually agree with you on these things, but yeah, will Man City drop off if they get? I think any manager that comes
there's
up.
There's an element of risk with it that I'm not sure if City take. A club like City doesn't necessarily need to take risks.
Okay.
Whereas like United might feel, oh, we need to take a risk. We're a bit further back. So it's more the appetite for risk that City are willing to take.
Yeah.
And whether that's needed. But that all could depend on the way they finish the season.
Yeah.
If Guardiola goes and they've not done well, as opposed to Guardiola goes and they finish quite high up on the table, that appetite for risk might change.
Yeah. In saying that, and it's slightly kind of just to shift gears. Speaking of Man, I don't think Man City are going to win this year. I still maintain. I think I said it. I lost faith for a few weeks there, but I think Chelsea will go and win it.
You don't think Liverpool will win? You don't think City will win?
Chelsea. I think Chelsea will win this year.
Chelsea are humming along, aren't they? We talked about the top four in England. There's I think it's Leicester, Tottenham, Liverpool, Southampton. Chelsea are fifth, and they're not far off. And
yeah, but you see, Chelsea fixed
I think Thiago helps give the defenders confidence. Zuma when he first came into that Chelsea side, that sort of 2011 type time, he was playing with quite senior players and did really well. Like we all thought he'd be the next big thing, but he didn't kick on. And I think that to me, it looks like there was a lack of leadership around him. He probably struggled. He probably struggled in just becoming that leader, but I think Thiago helps him with that. Yeah,
it's in the same way. Why I say that when I look at it now is that the way Liverpool bought Alisson and Van Dijk to plug those holes, and in my opinion, they've got very lucky with Thiago Silva, 36-year-old, coming in and playing as well he has. Besides his first two games, his first against West Brom was bad. Second was okay, and since then he's been a revelation. And then they've had Mendy come in, and man, they've kept 4 of the last 5 games. They've been clean sheets, all that kind of the usual stats that come with getting a great keeper. I think they're going to go win the league. Hakim Ziyech is Bruno on crack, man.
The question mark over Chelsea was not going forward. The question mark over Chelsea was at the back. They bought 2 players after we did that. After you predicted Chelsea would win, they had Thiago at the time. They didn't have the other keeper.
They didn't have Thiago at the time.
I'm willing to consider them as a good shot, a better shot at winning the title than when you said it. Simply because they've got that keeper, Mendy, right? Who's
from Rennes,
He doesn't seem like a superstar. He's just a calming influence with a young, impressionable team. He just seems like Mr. Calm. He's 27 years old. He's a good fit for that team.
See, Alisson was the same. He wasn't a superstar. Alisson at one point had conceded more goals at Anfield as a Roma player than he did as a Liverpool player.
Wasn't Alisson Brazil's number one though? You'd think, no, although he was at Roma, like a player at Roma, what
Like
was
he
expected
was
there?
humming along. His name was never in the conversation for the top 10 in the world. The same way Mendy now would be in the conversation just because he's at Chelsea. But
Fair enough.
I
Yeah.
think because he's a French league player, we never kind of considered him for that. But yeah, look, it's international. Any choice international games we can just kind of mention before finishing up?
Well, Finland beat France last night. That's an interesting one.
Oh,
Although
yeah.
France played with a weakened team.
We'll just kind of finish off with that then. What's this? I just want to see who
It's
played.
the first time Finland's ever beaten France. So well done to them.
Fair play. Yeah, let's see what the kind of. Yeah, France obviously dominated the game. Couldn't get many shots away. Who did they play? Zuma, Lenglet, Dubois, Digne, Sissoko, and Zondi, Pogba, Thuram. Yeah, Ben Yedder. Like, not a bad team, is it?
No.
No,
Incredible
not
depth
at all.
in French football. That Greater Paris area seems to be the current hotbed for world football talent.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like a lot of the
I forgot about that.
classy athletic players and a lot of sort of players with Arabic extractions that seem to do really well with the structures that they've got there. They've got really good structures in that sort of Greater Paris area to find the talent.
Are you saying they're colored, Shyam?
They make different lifestyle choices. That's what I'm saying.
No other big surprises there. Belgium beat Switzerland 2-1. Spain drew with Netherlands. Donny van de Beek scored, I think. Actually, I do know he scored. Yeah. Just looking. Oh, England's playing Ireland tonight, so I might actually catch that. But
yeah.
We'll finish off here. Any closing thoughts on the Shy show, the Shy Talk show?
No closing thoughts. I do think that it'll be interesting to see how England go. Interestingly, but I'm probably just bringing Chelsea up like that. I'm probably a bit more interested. I didn't think they really had a chance, frankly, when you brought it up the first time. But I'm now starting to see what you're talking about. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching with the 5-Yard Pass. My name is Suddy. This is Shyam, and as always, keep football simple and
keep passing, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.